Now the trick here, one of the wobbly bits, is that this works really well, say, for a cube. But if we were to put in, I don't know, let's add a torus. Where are you, torus? Our torus is probably going to look all wrong. Oh my goodness, look at that. That's just crazy town. What we'd have to do in this case is we need to add a texture sop, and we need to actually specify that on our texture, the texture coordinates that we actually want to put on this object, we actually want to be able to use. In this case, we don't have a cube map option, but we could do equirectangular. So if we used a set of equirectangular textures, instead of rendering a cube map, we could say render a dual paraboloid. Nah, it's not quite right. We could do a cube map. This is tricksy here. From a cube map, we could do a projection top, and right, we're putting in a cube map. We're getting an equirectangular texture out of it, and we can see that's like there's some goofy distortion there, but we've got some passable reflections. And in fact, this would probably be improved if we say turned up the number of divisions. If we had like a little bit more geometry to work with here, we'd end up with better performance for that equirectangular map. Yeah, look at that. That's much better. Right? And then with our Phong, we could start to play around some more with how reflective is this? How shiny is this? What are the different properties for how we're thinking about this particular piece, right? Our specular might be a brighter color here. Actually, we could go even brighter. Our shininess, right? We could kind of play with where's our hot spot. This gets much more fun, right? If instead of something like this, we use our good old friend, the noise sop. And then while we're at it, let's facet that. We could make sure that we've got unique points. We're going to compute our normals, right? What I want to make sure I do in this case is I don't want a mesh, I want a polygon. I don't want that many facets, right? Because that's super slow. But if I was something like 10 by 10, right? I've got this low poly, weird, facety looking thing. I'm going to turn down the, what do you call it? The amplitude of my noise so it's a little gentler. And if I pass this now into my texture, now we get something looking really goofy. Right now we're starting to get closer to that like strangely mirror-like object that is reflective and bouncy. We need to make sure, right, we're like a little close to this, so we have to actually move our camera probably back just a skosh to be able to see this better. We've got to play a dangerous game now, because as we move this camera back, we're going to see the curvature of the world more and more. But if we're careful about that, we could also increase the size of the world, and that will help mitigate some of that distortion. So this is one way that we can kind of think about some of this. Now, you could beef this up even more if you use a PBR material, right? You could go for a PBR kind of pipeline in this approach. We can use the same ideas. Our PBR material, let's add a substance. Top here, we'll use that as our input for color. Let's use something like, what do we want? Let's grab metal, because we've got some handles on this where we can really control how rough or shiny this is. It's got some nice flashy, metallic-y looking pieces there. In this case, we need to add an environment light. Environment light. There we go. Our environment light is going to behave actually in a lot of similar ways as our skybox. So we're going to go ahead and reuse that as our environment map. Okay, we're missing tangents. That's all right. We can dive in here. We're going to scoot our null over. Let's do all this upstream. We'll scoot. Oh no! Scoot these down. Choop. Insert attribute create. Add an attribute create in here. We'll make sure that we have tangents. It's going to help in this rendering process so that we are calculating our light the right way. Right? Whoa. So we've got some very flashy bits there. And then in our PBR, the last thing that we need to do on our maps is now we actually need a what do you call it? A environment. Actually, because we've got that environment light, we actually don't need to use this map as an environment. We just have to instead control, where are you? Our emit. So if we, whoops, excuse me, not emit, silly me. We just have to control how reflective and how bright this object is. So as we start to goof around with our parameters here, we're going to end up with something that's closer to, get over there, you, ending up with what we want the world to look like, or representing the world as reflective on this. And in fact, one of the things I would recommend that you do here is turn everything down so you can see actually the impact that you're having. Right? Ah, there we go. Let's leave our roughness down. Our metallic quality can come up here. Our specular level. Ah. This roughness is what's flattening out the scattering of our light here. Right? And so we're getting some of that reflective quality. It's moving too fast, stressing me out. Oh my goodness. Let's slow that down just a little bit. Times 0.5. Times 0.5. There we go. Our texture coordinates don't totally line up the way that we want them to. And in fact, we might want to come in here in our texture and turn off. We're going to just bypass our equirectangular map. And we see something that looks metallic and reflective, but not totally mirror-like. And that's, in part related to all of the maps that we have that are feeding all of the different distortion pieces here. So there's a couple different techniques that you can play around with. Certainly, this Phong technique is one of my favorites. I love the way this ends up looking because it's very shiny, very fancy. And so this is a look at how do we handle reflection.